squarely on Biden's shoulders, Chow. President Trump puts Afghan nationals under the microscope after the deadly D.C. ambush.
National Guard attack and policy fallout and security failure approx. 5 o'clock tone. Measured, informative. Good morning. We begin with the horrific, targeted ambush near the White House that has put America's entire immigration screening process under the microscope. We will break down the suspects, the critical security failures, and the unprecedented policy freeze now in effect. On Thanksgiving Eve, 2 West Virginia National Guardsmen, deployed to the area as part of the president's crackdown on crime, were ambushed. Tragically, Army Specialist Sarah Beckram, just 20 years old, succumbed to her injuries. Air Force Staff Sergeant Andrew Wolf, 24, remains hospitalized in critical condition. Fighting for his life, the alleged assailant has been identified as Rahmanullah Lakanwal, a 29-year-old Afghan national. Lakanwal was an individual who came to the United States in September 2021 under the Operation Allies Welcome Program. This program was intended to quickly resettle Afghan nationals who had assisted the U.S. military after the chaotic withdrawal. Lakanwal, specifically, had worked for a CIA-backed counterterrorism outfit known as a Zero Unit, highly sensitive work that should have ensured rigorous initial vetting. Despite this initial vetting, his journey in the U.S. has been marred by signs of severe mental health challenges. Community workers and case managers were sending emails to nonprofits as early as 2023, warning that Lakanwal was experiencing manic episodes, isolating himself for weeks on end in a darkened room. And struggling with deep depression and paranoia, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem has publicly stated that Lakanwal was radicalized after he arrived in the United States. This points to a massive failure in the post-arrival monitoring system, which critics say failed to enforce mandatory yearly check-ins for parolees, allowing Lakanwal to slip into isolation and a potential extremist state unchecked. The timing of the D.C. attack also came just 24 hours after a separate but related incident, the arrest of another Afghan national, Mohammed Al-Akasi, also paroled under Operation Allies Welcome, who was charged in Texas with making a terroristic threat. Al-Akasi allegedly posted online about building a bomb to target the Fort Worth area. These back-to-back incidents have exposed what the Trump administration calls paper-thin vetting, a system that lacked basic biometric screening and proper cross-agency intelligence sharing. The political response has been immediate and sweeping. President Trump has announced a permanent pause on migration from all third-world countries and has ordered an immediate halt to all asylum decisions across the board. Furthermore, the State Department has temporarily stopped issuing visas to anyone traveling on an Afghan passport. The administration has made clear that the debate is no longer about border security, but about an urgent crisis of interior security. We will continue to track the policy fallout, but first, let's look at the criminal status of the accused. Part 2. Criminal charges and legal status approx. 5 o'clock tone. Objective. Legalistic. Focused on consequence to clarify the criminal and legal consequences for the accused. Rahmanullah Lakanwal, D.C. shooter, following the tragic death of Specialist Beckram, the U.S. Attorney's Office upgraded charges against Lakanwal to include first-degree murder. He also faces multiple counts of assault with intent to kill, while armed in possession of a firearm during a crime of violence. The FBI director has publicly described the shooting as a heinous act of terrorism. And Attorney General Pam Bondi has stated that prosecutors will be urged to seek the death penalty in this case. Lakanwal was shot by a third National Guard member at the scene and is currently hospitalized and sedated. Complicating efforts to interview him for motive, he remains in federal custody. Authorities are currently executing search warrants coast to coast, including his home in Bellingham, Washington, and are combing through his devices and communications for any signs of radicalization or external coordination. Mohammed Al-Akasi, Texas plotter. The Afghan national arrested in Texas is currently charged with making a terroristic threat at the state level. The key factor here is the involvement of U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE. ICE has placed a detainer on Alakozi. This means that regardless of the outcome of his criminal case, he is marked for deportation proceedings based on the nature of the threat he posed. The asylum and immigration freeze. The most profound effect is the administrative crackdown. The order to halt all asylum decisions and visa issuance means indefinite suspension for tens of thousands of immigrants. All legal processing, including applications for permanent residency or green cards, is now frozen indefinitely. Full scale. Re-examination. The administration is using this pause to conduct what it calls a full-scale, rigorous re-examination of every asylum and green card case. Granted 2 individuals from a targeted list of what it calls countries of concern, including Afghanistan. Removal action. Any individual whose revetting reveals potentially disqualifying information, whether it is criminal history, mental instability, or signs of radicalization, will be placed on an immediate path toward removal and deportation. This swift, aggressive legal and policy action underscores the administration's belief that a failure in the vetting system created an immediate and unacceptable national security threat within the country's borders. We will continue to follow the investigation and the ensuing legal battles.